This is my portfolio, and we are going to do a quick review first of the calculations that I use to be able to understand and run scenarios on my very own portfolio. And later we'll talk about the actual portfolio for things that you find to be interesting. So we're going to do the columns in this spreadsheet first. This is the spreadsheet that I have made myself. I recognize that there are lots of calculators out there. There are lots of calculations. And me personally, I need to understand how the numbers are being calculated. For me, it just doesn't make sense to plug into somebody else's calculator. So I've created my own. Every investor has their own way to do it. I'm just a strong believer that you need to be able to know the numbers and control your calculations. So you don't have to do it my way, but I'm going to show you just in case you're interested. So this worksheet is a work in progress. I've been using it for years and continuously am tweaking and developing it. Here are the different columns. We're going to go through the different columns that I have. First one is my total cash in. This is calculated. I could probably have these in a better order. And I apologize for the sounds behind me. I am in a public place while I'm doing this. The second column is all in debt and cash. This is also calculated. Third is the purchase price. The fourth is the repair expense. So I'm plugging these numbers in, calculating them over here. Basic math, folks. I calculated down payment at 25%, but I do change that. For example, on this one, I know I put 15. It was more like 15%. So this is a calculated field, but I do change it depending on the scenario. Then I have my units. I allow for up to 8 units because I was considering an 8 unit at one point, but right now all my buildings are 1 to 4 units. So I calculate the gross monthly rent. I add a mortgage, which is the principal and interest only, because I break out my real estate and insurance taxes. Or I'm sorry, my real estate and insurance separately, just because those may change, and I use different types of loans, so they may or may not be PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, right? So I just keep that separate. It works for me. This is what my property management charges me for each property. This is what I project on spending in yard maintenance. All of these numbers are monthly, even though yard maintenance in St. Louis is really not for 12 full months. I just kind of project that because for me, it's not important to be super exact. Even though some of these are somewhat fixed expenses, I don't base my calculators on variable expenses or expenses that are dependent on the day-to-day decisions that happen in a year. And I'll probably talk about why that is at some point in time. Or if not, write me a comment and ask me that question. I'll be glad to answer it. So this, I record the monthly water and trash. Water and trash in St. Louis is quarterly. So I just take the annual amount paid and divide it by 12 to have a monthly amount. Sewer is monthly, and so I have that here. Generally speaking, these next 4 columns are not used, except for in a case in this line here, which is the Alaska number 1. I do have an apartment in that building where I am paying for internet, electric, and gas. And when I am not living in that apartment, I do rent it month to month to traveling nurses. So I include those expenses. Annual gross income. This is calculated by my gross rent divided by or multiplied by 12. And then I begin doing some calculations here. So as we start, I'm just going to keep this over here. We'll finish the columns. I calculate a net operating income. That is basically my annual gross income minus the fixed expenses that we just went through on an annual basis. Separately, I reduce the cash flow after my annual mortgage payments because I do not consider them fixed expenses, nor should you. It's just the way sometimes I have a mortgage and sometimes I don't. I want to know how the property is performing regardless of the mortgage. So that's over here. This is my cash flow after a mortgage. This is my personal cap rate, which typically, if you're making a purchase, it's going to be the net operating income divided by your purchase price. In my case, I've bought almost everything at a discount and then improved it. So my cap rate is calculated by my purchase price plus any repair expenses. Or in some buildings, like the first one in Shaw, I've owned for 12 years. So I add the capital expenditures, but I don't add just basic maintenance, right? So if I fix a toilet or something, I don't add that into my to reduce from my expenses for cap rate. Another way of looking at your return from a property is cash on cash return. And so this is mine. It's the same concept. It's the amount of cash that I've put into a building divided by the net operating income. The next column is per unit cost. Some people like to look at this. It just kind of helps me understand from the money that I've put in, how much money per unit do I have? And you'll see that that changes a little bit by neighborhood. This is not something that I would think would be a purchase guide, right? You couldn't buy a 4-family in Shaw for $63,000 per unit today. It's my cost per unit, not a price per unit. So then finally, the ARV is what I believe that I could sell the building for based on its condition, income, and location, and any loan balance that I have on that property. Finally, the interest rate on any loan that I am currently carrying, and a rough profit for me from the cash at sale minus the loan balance. Again, looks like I need a little work here, but the cash at close would be what I would assume to have after including any real estate agent commissions. So for example, if I sell my own buildings, I still charge myself 6%. And pay that to myself in my real estate brokerage from my investor perspective. And then this is just for for me to use as a tool. This is the cap rate in this column that a buyer would be receiving if they purchased any of my buildings at the existing ARV. Some of these others aren't important to other people, but it's what I would stand to make in commissions and the amount of projected capital gains that would be taxed. And I also, when I'm playing around with things, I try to calculate the amount of money that would go into a 1031 exchange. But those are really kind of just some working fields. So those are the fields that I'm using, and I'll go over my portfolio in another video coming soon.